What's up, guys? Welcome back to DCA. Today, what we're going to do is look at on-chain metrics. We're going to specifically be looking at the number of active addresses on the Bitcoin network and demonstrate how important this is to the price of Bitcoin over time. So if you're familiar with Metcalfe's law, this is a law which basically says that the value of a network is equal to the number of users squared. So it's basically a way of saying that as you grow in size, each new member is worth significantly more than the prior was. In other words, the first member doesn't add much to the network value. The 100th member adds significantly more than the first member did. And the 1,000th member added to the network adds significantly more than the 100th did, and so on and so forth. So what we're doing today is looking at active addresses in relation to the Bitcoin price, and we're going to visualize this in several different ways. I've also done regression analysis in order to attempt to predict where the number of active addressers is headed. In other words, how many active users can we expect on the network in the future? And what might that say about the price of Bitcoin? And I think there's a pretty clear trend developing, and I'm going to talk about that today. Now, if you're in altcoins and you don't really care about Bitcoin, trust me, this affects you too, because Bitcoin is the proxy for the value of the entire cryptocurrency asset class. If Bitcoin slows down in growth, and that will likely extend to the rest of the asset class, at least in the foreseeable future. There may become a time in the future where the price decouples from the action of Bitcoin, but that time is not here yet. So this is inherently related to the rest of the asset class. So if you hold altcoins, this will determine whether those altcoins go to the moon or lose 90% of their value. Okay. Okay, so this is the number of active addresses over time. So we're just simply looking at the number of users on the network over a given time. And this is a linear scale of time and a log scale of the number of addresses. So basically this says this is, 10 users. The next would be 100 users, 1,000 users, 10,000, 100,000, a million, and 10 million, which note we have not reached. So we are currently sitting right at around a million users plus or minus. So you can see that in 2010, early 2010, we had just a few users. So around 4 users right here. Now to get up to 1,000 users, it only took a year. So that was basically, approaching 250x increase in users in just a year. Then from 1,000, so we got to 10,000 here, and then to around 25,000 here. It only took a half a year or even less than that. So then we retracted some, and this is what we see with market cycles. It's very similar, the trend. When this peaks, the price tends to peak. Okay. So we didn't get back to 25,000 users until around early 2012. And notice when this is increasing, so when this is starting to trend upwards at an increasing rate, the price of Bitcoin is also starting to increase. So even if you don't know where exactly what the price was during these times, just remember our market cycle peaks were right here in 2011, right here in 2013, and the end of 2013, November of 2013. Right here, where we see another peak in 2017 or early 2018, and right here in May of 2021. Okay, so we basically reached up to around 100,000 users in the first part of 2013. Then the price plummeted, if you recall. And that's what we see right here. The price plummeted as a result of the number of active users plummeting. From there, the number of users rapidly increased. We went all the way up to around 200,000 users compared to 130,000 at the first part of 2013. So this is the double peak cycle. And from there, the number of users just it retracted for a bit, but now people are starting to learn about it. It's starting to make the news. And from there, even though the price was depressed, the number of active users was trending up over time. And you can see, you could imagine just a curved line right under here, trending up with time. Okay. Then once it really starts to move up right here, so you can see there's a significant increase in the end of 2015. This is when we see our bull market for essentially the end of 2015 through 2018 occur as this really starts to move. And I should mention, I forgot to mention this, the color code is simply the number of days elapsed. So it's just to sort of guide your eye or to help you think about the progression of time. Okay, so as we're moving forward, the price peaks here in 2018. In fact, we get all the way up to 1.26 million users on the network. And what happens? Well, exactly what we would expect. The price peaks, then the number of active users rapidly drops. So we just fall off this cliff right here. Okay, so we go all the way down to around 400,000 users. In other words, Bitcoin loses approximately 800,000 users in a half of a year, or even less than that, really. So in a half of a year, we retract approximately 66% of the network. And that's reflected in the price, okay? So this comes down, it sort of reaches this trough right here. We reach this trough and then we start moving back up. Now you'll note, essentially, we were at these similar levels of users on the network back in 2016, okay, 2017. And we didn't get back to those levels consistently anyway until 2018. But the price had already, essentially bottomed out, sort of moved sideways the number of users for a time, and then we started to move up again. So you can see this trend line is again continuing up. So the number of active users is directly related to the price. I think this is obvious, but the thing that you need to think about is the number of users on the network will fluctuate over time, just like the price will. So with the price, we expect there are times of rapid expansion or parabolic phases where people that aren't really they're just speculating in crypto only are flocking to the network, and that's what we're seeing with the number of active users. Okay, these are the people flocking to the network when they go above this, if you just imagined a curved trend line here. All right, and then there are times when people that are even into crypto are scared and they lose their faith, and that's when we fall below these trend lines, as we saw during the quote unquote crypto winter of 2018. All right, so we've been trending back up now. And in fact, if you look on average, so just imagine this bull market here, 2015 up until 2018. On average, the number of users on the network sort of bottoms out around these values right here. So right around 500,000 users on the network. So that's our sort of our base level you can think of. Back in 2016, your base level would have been lower at around 375,000 or so. Okay, so on average, we are increasing users on the network over time. Okay, and we're seeing that reflect in the price. And in fact, if you come here to the recent crash that we saw in May, notice that the number of users on the network was declining here. But then what we saw is the number of users bottomed out, and we bottomed at around 650,000. I guess there was one day where it did get much further down. But we've reached this sort of resistance level, you could think of it as, at around 650,000. And now we're trending back up. And you saw this, if you go back to 2017, you saw this happen multiple times where there would be times where we would go up in price. Now, price is not on here, but these do correspond to rapid increases in price. We would go up in price and then correct. And then for several months, we would be below our expected trend line, and then we would come back up. Okay. So it happened here, it happened here to a lesser extent, it happened here, and this is the beginning of 2017 when we had that first big parabolic move. We corrected and then we came down, the number of users came down, and then we shot back up. And in fact, we went all the way up to nearly 1.3 million. So during this cycle, we've sort of sat above a million, and we've been consistently getting above a million again. And that's kind of right where we're at right now. Now our peak this cycle was 1.36 million. Okay. So what this sort of says to me, just, with relation to the current moment in time, is we are increasing the users on the network. Now, if you look back in 2018 when we crashed, we didn't start rising again like we're doing now. We did not start rising. We sort of went sideways back until 2019, and that's when the bull market continued. So right now we have in fact been rising again back to this expected trend line. So it sort of indicates to me that as long as this trend continues, these short-term price fluctuations are not significant. I mean, they're significant in that you need to pay heed to them and, not lose sight of the global market at hand, because if things are going bad globally, well, this can quickly turn back down. But at the moment, it does appear to be trending back up, and at worst, I'm hopefully optimistic because, I think there's evidence to support the fact that we are definitively trending upwards, and we'll need to see if that continues. Now, if we just fall back off and start going down, then that should raise the alarm bells. All right. So, when I show you guys things like this, I'm not making any predictions. I'm merely showing you the data, presenting my thoughts about the data, and then allowing you to take that information and make your own informed decision rather than, listening to other people just saying everything's going up, it's always going up, this is the only thing that can happen. You need, as an investor, to look at the data and make your own decisions. This is merely to show you what the data is and present it in a way that is, palatable for the average person, just to, look at this and think about it rationally rather than just hearing every day that the price is going up. What I've done then is I've performed a regression analysis on this trend in order to determine where might we expect the number of active users in the future. Now, just recall, any given time, we can be significantly above or below this trend. Okay, so this is exactly what we were just looking at, color-coded by number of days elapsed again. Okay, so now we're looking at active addresses, and this is the model trend line. Okay, so you can see that we are on a clear uptrend. And like I said, there's times when we are above this trend line, and these are typically times where we're in a, ascending into a bull market. And there are times when we're below the trend line. All right, so basically we've been fluctuating right along the trend line all through 2019, 2020, and even back into 2019 and for a time in 2018, although typically we were more below it in 2018. So notice that we did the same thing back in 2014 and 15, okay? And even some of, 2013. Prior to the 2018 bull run, we were sort of moving along this trend line. And then once the market really got kicked off, we were able to get above it. Now, we've mostly been right along the trend line, okay? And now we've moved below, but are trending back above it. And again, this is what you saw. There would be times when we would trend down from, being above, significantly above the trend line to below it, and then we would kick back above it. So we will be watching for this trend to move back above the model trend line. All right. And, if things change and we start, let's say we just started moving kind of this way, well, then we would just need to rework the model at some point in the future. But at the time, this is the best, this is the best that we can do based on the data that we have. So what we're saying here is we're moving above this trend, but importantly, this is showing you where we might expect the number of active users to be in the future. Okay. So if this trend were to continue and we kept moving right along this line, by 2023, we would expect there to be approximately, and on average, 1.3 million users, which is sort of where our peak levels are at right now. Okay. And if it were to continue in 2024, on average, we would expect around 155,000 users on the network, right? And then I've modeled it all the way out to 2025. And so you can see that in 2023, we would be at approximately 1.3 million users, which compares to our peak right now. In 2024, we would expect to be at around 1.55 million users. And in 2025, around 1.75 million. So 1.75 million users in 2025. So basically what this is saying is we expect somewhere around 1.75 million users on the network based on historical trends by 2025. Okay. Now, that may not sound like a significant increase in the number of users, but remember Metcalfe's law. Each user on the network is exponentially more valuable than the prior user. So the value of the network grows exponentially as you add users. Okay. So when we saw these smaller increases in the number of users, I mean, think back to 2016. Back then, we had maybe an average of around, if we just took an average, maybe around 450,000 or so over the span of this bull run. Maybe closer to 5 or 600,000. Whereas over the course of this bull run, we've maybe had 700,000 or so. So that small extra 100,000 average user that we've had over this time has led to a price increase reaching a peak of around 20,000 to reaching a peak of 69,000 that we've seen in this market cycle. So adding even just these smaller numbers of users significantly increases the price. So this is just something to keep in mind as we keep going forward here. But, we're expecting, at least at the moment, the analysis says that this is the trend that we're on. And, we've sort of moved below it, but we've had times where we go above it. We're back below it, but we're trending back above it now. Okay, guys, so this is price over addresses. So basically, what is the price of Bitcoin per address? And recall we've said that the price of Bitcoin increases exponentially as you add users. So that's why you're seeing this situation where we're approaching a place of the network being worth basically $0.1 per active user. This is sort of demonstrating to you Metcalfe's law. In other words, as Bitcoin adds more users to the network, even small increases in users are increasing the price. Recall back to so this would be our market cycle peak in 2018. On average, there were only about, there were about 500,000 to 600,000 users on the network during this time. And the value of Bitcoin at that time was somewhere between 0.001 and $0.002 per user on the network. Whereas now we're approaching 0.1, so 10 times higher. And we've only added on average maybe 100 to 150,000 users on the network. Okay. So if you add another 150 or so thousand users on the network, this will shoot up and continue this way. So adding even smaller numbers of users on the network exponentially increases the value of the network. At least that is what it has done so far. It has adhered to what you would expect, at least a form of Metcalfe's law. It doesn't follow it precisely, but it does follow it over time. Now, this may seem insignificant to you, but I assure you it is not. As you go, if you want let's say for instance that we were here, okay, that we were at 10 to the 0, which is 1. If we were sitting here, that would mean 1 million users equals a $1 million Bitcoin. So as you move up the scale, and we are trending along moving up the scale, your price increases over time, okay? So if we were actually able to get up to 0.1, this level right here, so the price per address, if we were able to get to right here, that would put Bitcoin at somewhere between 80,000 to 100,000 up to 120,000, depending on how many active users are on the network around that time. But instead, since we're at around 1 million users on the network, the price is 0.05. Okay, but we have got as high as 0.08. So we nearly reached this level of 0.1, but we have not been able to get there yet. But all indications say that over time, we are moving towards this level. And I suspect that once we get consistently to this 0.8 or so level, 0.9, that's when we will be able to get to $100,000 Bitcoin. And then once you start moving into these ranges, this is when you will see a multi-$100,000 Bitcoin, okay? And not until then. Because remember what we said, we predict that the number of active users by 2025, so somewhere out here, is going to be around 100 or 1.75 million. So in other words, if we were at this valuation, if we were sitting right at around 0.1 with 1.75 million users, that would be a $175,000 Bitcoin, right? And all indications say that we are trending in this direction, okay? So if you were to go out to around 2025, and let's just say, so this would be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and let's just say we're somewhere around here. Let's just say 0.2. Let's be conservative. You were around 0.2 and you had 1.75 million users on the network times 0.2, that gives you a $350,000 Bitcoin. Okay, so we're looking at the same thing again, price per address over time. So November 2010, November 2011, etc. And I've modeled it forward. Now, I've actually purposely chosen to do this model on the more conservative side because I like to think about things in terms of what their potential sort of lower values are, because I don't want to own the asset at its higher values. I want to be selling it to someone else at these higher levels. And that should be your goal as well. So, you should be thinking about when the price per address is very low. These are the best times to be buying Bitcoin, these lower price per address. And I'm actually going to model the upper limit and the lower limit. And I have a more conservative value modeled right here, but I'm going to just give a true fit, and I'll probably, make this available sometime soon. So, but for the moment, this is a more conservative fit that I've done, and just looking at going forward. So when this comes down, when this price comes down from where we're at right now, I would expect us to be somewhere back in this range. And this is the 10, so this is 0.02, 0.03 range, whenever the market cycle inevitably comes back down. Okay. So right now, like I said, we're sitting at around 0.05. So we might expect Bitcoin to reach this 0.1 level sometime at around 2026. And now that's an average though. That's not, remember, in a market cycle peak, this increases, this goes parabolic above this trend line. And In bear markets, we go significantly below this trend line. Okay. So you can think of this as being sort of your base level, and then these levels significantly below or significantly above as being your bull markets. So by 2026, we might expect around a 0.09 average. Okay. Or it's not quite an average, but it's sort of you're not quite in a bull market or a bear market. You're in that indeterminate zone. So let's come back and look at this again with that information. So we know that as we go forward in time, we're increasing the number of addresses on the network. And we also know that the price per address is increasing over time. And we're saying that we might expect out in around 2026, where we might expect around 2 million users on the network as an average, that the price will be around 0.09, maybe as high as around 0.1. And so that would give us somewhere between a 180 up to, 175 up to $225,000 Bitcoin in 2026. Like we said, that's just your average price though. Over time, and in a bull market, you will see this extend significantly above the whatever the trend line is. So the trend line predicts around 500,000 here, but we go all the way up to 1.3 million. And similarly here, we're predicting around a million, but we go up to 1.3 million. So what this means is that while $200,000 might be your average Bitcoin in 2026, based on this information, you may get all the way up to hundreds of thousands of dollars above that average. But that also means you may go significantly below it if there is a severe correction. I just think this is a powerful tool for looking historically at Bitcoin, at its growth, and how that growth is directly affecting the price of Bitcoin over time. And I think it's something you simply cannot ignore. You have to take into consideration the growth of the network and how that growth of the network is influencing the price directly. Okay. I think it also shows you that people are getting really down on the market right now, but we are clearly trending upwards. So if we just come in, you can see that we came down, but we are, if we just put a trend line right through here, it would be directly up above. Now that doesn't mean we will get above. It simply means we are moving that way, and given time, we will get back above it and the price will continue to rise. Now, certainly we can experience a short-term market correction right now. That is entirely within the realm of possibility, and we could retract significantly even. But on this channel, I'm not concerned in the slightest with what the short-term corrections are. It's not part of my investment strategy. I don't think it's how you become, I don't think it's how you accrue wealth. You can play lottery tickets if you want to become a millionaire overnight. Looking at things like this, I think is absolutely critical so that you have a broader perspective as to where the market's going, giving yourself some type of framework that you can then judge what value is this investment to you. So if you believe that this trend will continue and the network will continue to add users onto it, well, it's fairly clear that the value of the network is significantly increasing over time. That's it for this one, guys. If you guys like this type of content, hit like and subscribe. You can head over to the Telegram channel to sign up for the DCA risk index model. This is a model which takes into account various factors influencing the price of Bitcoin and attempts to model market cycle peaks and bottoms, and in fact has done quite well at doing that in 2013, 2017, and recently in 2021. So it sort of guides when you should be looking to get out of the market because the market is becoming significantly overheated. It also exists for multiple altcoins. So like I said, that's it for this one, guys. Until next time, as usual, see ya.